Chapter 14, The Masked Person, 1. Normally, Rody would have been happy to have a beautiful girl reach out to him and take off his clothes, even if these clothes were only wrapped around his head. However, if the clothes were hiding his long ears, it was another matter entirely. Rody cried out in alarm. He immediately moved backwards and ended up falling off the bed. Ah! Young Master Seth. The young girl looked at Rody's eyes and was surprised to see his panic-stricken face. You don't come any closer. Rody scrambled to sit up and stretched his hands in front to keep her away. The young girl suppressed her smile and asked, "What happened to you?" She then stretched out her hands to pull Rody up. While she tried to pull him, Rody quickly rolled under the bed. After that, he blurted out with a muffled voice, "Don't come here." I. The girl frowned. "What do you mean you? I. Young Master Seth, what's the matter with you? He is asking you not to approach him." A cold voice sounded from the door. The girl looked back and saw Nicole standing at the door. Nicole's chin was slightly raised as she looked coldly at the girl. The young girl quickly lowered her head and quietly called out, "Miss Nicole." Nicole waved lightly and said, "That's enough, Angel, you can leave the room now. I will deal with this." Without hesitation, the young maid put down the silver pot, hastily bowed and left the room. She had been with the Tulip family for a while now and knew that although the young master was the heir to the family, she also knew that at home, Nicole was the one with the most authority. Nicole was not on very good terms with the maid. She resented her brother for his shortcomings so much that she even resented the people around him. Rody made sure Angel had left the room before popping his head out from under the bed. He stared at Nicole and said angrily, "You have finally arrived? What do I do now? Quickly turn me back into my old self." Nicole was slightly apologetic and gently said, "That I can't do that for the moment, but I am looking for a way. There is also one other matter." What other useless matter could there possibly be? I have such preposterous ears. How can I go out and meet people? Rody almost roared. Nicole's face was grim as she scolded, "To even dare to use this tone when you speak with me. Have you forgotten your place?" She paused. "Although there is a bit of a problem right now, do you think you have the right to shout at me? Do not forget your sins and mistakes. I could justifiably punish you any way I wish, yet you dare to yell at me." Rody was speechless. True, his current status was a servant. Where in the world could a servant scold his master? Moreover, aside from the attack on the Tulip family, he could also be charged with indecent assault. With these crimes, any kind of punishment the Tulip family could dish out would not be considered excessive. "Come out now," Nicole coldly shouted. Sure enough, Rody crawled out from under the bed and obediently stood in front of Nicole. Seeing Rody's aggrieved face, Nicole lightly said, "You had better be well behaved and don't make that face as if the heavens have wronged you. If you are more earnest, I will find a way to make your ears turn normal again. If you do not listen to me, since I can turn you into a donkey, giving you a pig's snout would not be a difficult task." These words worked extremely well. Rody immediately stood straight obediently and no longer showed any dissatisfaction on his face. At the very least, he showed no dissatisfaction on the surface. It was no joke. At the very least, he could use a hat to hide his long ears. However, if his nose were to also be turned into a pig's snout, that would really be disastrous. From then on, he would need to hide his face wherever he went. That is better. Nicole looked satisfied as she noticed Rody's improvement in behavior. She then lightly said, "Now, dress up and follow me. Have you forgotten? You are supposed to meet with Master Autumn this afternoon. Not everyone can have the opportunity to be taught by Master Autumn." This was the only news that could lift Rody's mood. After all, Rody was also a swordsman. To be taught by Master Autumn was the dream of every young novice swordsman. Rody's unhappiness was considerably assuaged and, without further delay, he followed Nicole out of the room. On the way, Rody further calmed down as his emotions stabilized. His brain started prompting him to ask questions. "Miss Nicole, just now the room I was sleeping in was my little brother's room. That my current face and also that maid earlier. Why did she call me young master?" Nicole stopped and looked back at Rody before replying lightly, "Your questions will have an answer. However, it is best that you be quiet for now. When it is time for you to know, I will tell you." Rody immediately shut his mouth. After all, his current status was a servant. Rody thought that he was going directly to see Master Autumn at the yard. He only realized Nicole was not taking him there when he arrived at the rundown two-story building. His first thought was to run. Why is it this place again? He looked at Nicole with vigilant eyes. Yesterday, this woman here made him put on some kind of god's smile that ended with him growing a pair of long ears. Today, she brought him here again. What did she want now? When Rody hesitated to follow Nicole in, Nicole coldly asked, "Why did you stop walking?" Rody looked at the building and then at Nicole's face. Although he did not say anything, the meaning was clear. "Didn't you say we are going to see Master Autumn?" Rody said with a woeful face. "Idiot," Nicole lightly said. "How can you meet Master Autumn with your current appearance? I do not want others to know about this secret." As Rody was still thinking, Nicole impatiently grabbed his arm and dragged him into the small building. "A secret that we do not want others to know about? My current appearance?" Rody's mind suddenly had an idea. "Oh my God! This woman does not want to do that, right? Isn't that absurd?" Chapter 15, The Masked Person, 2. Without allowing Rody's imagination to run wild, Nicole pulled him into the first floor of the small building. Something silver-like was on the front table. It gave out a soft light inside the darkened room. Rody understood what it was at a glance. It was a mask. A silver mask. Nicole stood at the side and went straight to the point. "Put it on." Rody hesitated. The previous time, he had worn that god's smile that literally ruined his life. What was he going to wear this time? The last time, he obtained rabbit ears. What about this time? Would he really end up with a pig's snout? Nicole looked at the panicking boy and could not help but laugh. She reassured him, "Don't worry. This is just an ordinary mask." "But why should I wear this mask?" This woman had done so much to change his face and now she wanted him to cover his face. Was there something wrong? Nicole was too lazy to explain to him and coldly said, "Because this is an order." Rody sighed as he thought. As expected, he somewhat guessed Nicole's idea. But isn't that idea crazy? Nicole looked pleased with Rody's appearance after he put on the mask. Rody was tall and slender. The mask was also very exquisite, except for the unpleasant-looking long ears and his long fluttering hair. It gave a confident and mysterious impression. The design of the mask was ingenious as Rody, wearing it, did not feel that it was particularly suffocating. He made a wry smile and asked, "What do we do about the ears?" He was very hopeful that Nicole would change his ears back but was soon disappointed. Nicole took out two objects and gave them to Rody. They were often used by the nobles in winter to cover their ears and keep them warm. Nicole gave Rody two large earmuffs and quietly told him, "Fold your ears and then cover them with these." Fortunately, although the ears were long, they were also soft. Rody felt a little bit of pain when he folded the ears and then covered it with the earmuffs. However, Rody did not dare to object further. Nicole went to Rody's side and carefully straightened out his hair in such a way that the hair would cover his ears. That way, it would be impossible to see anything. Rody could feel Nicole's soft hand stroking his head and could also smell the girl's fragrance. If it was not because of the light ache in his ears, everything would have been very satisfying. He even had a faint hope of extending this moment forever. Nicole looked at Rody with a satisfied expression and said, "All right." She did not realize that her tone had become softer. In fact, Nicole was not a cold, unsympathetic person, whether it was at home or in the imperial capital. Rather than bad-tempered, Nicole was more of a gentle person. It was just that there were too many incidents in the past 2 days. She was attacked on the way home and was violated by Rody in the middle of the night. More importantly, her family's heir ran away from home. The young girl had to bear all the family burdens and was exhausted as a result. She was easily irritated. Other than that day when Nicole was furious about Rody's indecent acts, Nicole did not treat the boy that was 2 years younger than her with much prejudice. She actually admired this big boy as he had dared to sneak into her home, regardless of his own safety, to rescue a friend. Besides that, Master Autumn also appreciated his talent in swordplay. On the other hand, she had hoped her brother had such strength in character. At the very least, she would not need to carry the family's burden on her shoulders. As for that time when Rody stole a kiss while she was unconscious, she just treated him as a young and naive child. Nicole was aware of her innate beauty and that she had already captivated countless nobles in the imperial capital. After all, Rody was also a young man. Rody was still immersed in this moment of bliss when his hand was released by Nicole. It turned out that while he was in this dazed state, she had already led him to the yard from yesterday. When he arrived, Master Autumn was already standing in the yard. Master Autumn was dressed in grey clothes like before. His signature long white hair flowed down from both sides this time, instead of the broadsword used for soldiers. At his waist, he was carrying a sword normally used by nobles. Rody finally turned his attention away from Nicole's body. He then noticed something peculiar about Master Autumn. Rody had met master swordsmen before, such as the teachers that teach swordsmanship in the Imperial Academy. There were also the other masters from the Imperial capital. You could immediately identify them from the crowd. Based on Rody's impression, master swordsmen would have a certain posture that naturally projects a fierce and powerful presence. It was as if they were afraid that others do not know how strong they were. On the other hand, Master Autumn was entirely different. He was just casually standing there, looking completely at ease. He was just like an ordinary person without the imposing manner of a master. Master Autumn had seen Nicole and Rody as they approached from a distance. He curiously looked at the silver mask on Rody's face. Before Master Autumn could speak, Nicole explained with a smile. His look was so special that I decided to give him a mask. Thinking of Rody, who had a frightening countenance because of his yin-yang face, Master Autumn gave a faint smile and nodded his head. Following that, he, the strongest swordsman of the Imperial capital and the one recognized as a Grand Master of swordsmanship, did not spare any pleasantries with Nicole. He casually stated, "Let us begin." Finishing his statement, he glanced at Nicole. Nicole smiled back and quietly left. Master Autumn smiled as he looked at Rody, who was standing ramrod straight. He simply said, "Don't be so nervous. Actually, I cannot teach you many things except some simple guides are to be precise. I cannot teach you any specific moves, but if you have any question about sword play, I should be able to give you an answer." Rody was really nervous. Master Autumn was teaching him sword play. It was glorious. Master Autumn was the person acknowledged as the future user of the holy sword. "What's wrong? Are there any problems?" Master Autumn smiled. "Yes." Rody quickly nodded. "Master Autumn, do you have any disciples?" Master Autumn was stunned for a moment as he did not expect Rody to ask him this question. He pondered for a moment before smiling and giving his reply. "Why did you ask me this question? But I can give you an answer. I have no disciples." Oh, Rody nodded. He started thinking. Master Autumn made a strange face and continued, "Actually, I should have had an apprentice. However, before I got to meet him, before I was able to receive him as my disciple, he ran away." "Ran away?" Rody shouted in disbelief. "My God! There is actually such a fool. If you include the number of people who wanted to be Master Autumn's disciple, including His Majesty the Emperor's princes and the rest of the commoners, you would find that there would at least be 3 long rows of people lining up waiting to become his apprentice. No matter how long they waited, their turn would not arrive. To think that there was an idiot who had the chance to become his disciple but did not want it." "Excuse me," Rody carefully asked, "are you willing to accept disciples in the future?" "Probably," Master Autumn said, "without commitment." In that case, Rody's voice was more careful. "What are the prerequisites to be your disciple?" Master Autumn looked deeply at Rody before he replied indifferently, "About this, it is pointless even if you asked." He looked at Rody and laughed. "I will not accept you as my disciple. There is no point in continuing this conversation." "Why?" Rody blurted out. Master Autumn sighed lightly. "I have my own reasons." Rody cleverly shut his mouth since the other party was unwilling to speak. It is better if he did not pursue the question. After all, to get Master Autumn's guidance itself was already a rare thing. "If your curiosity has been sated, can we start now? I do not have much time, so I cannot stay here for long." Master Autumn smiled. Although he had only met Rody twice, he had a good impression of the youth. Rody immediately nodded and temporarily pushed the idea of becoming his disciple to the back of his mind. He then asked, Yesterday. What was the technique you used when you broke my sword? I only remembered parrying 2 strikes. Why did my sword break into so many pieces? Master Autumn thought for a moment before asking again, you wish to learn that? Yes. Rody nodded without hesitation.